Here's a really interesting article. I saw this in a video made by a channel called Censored Gaming, and he made a pretty good video showing some context to this and giving some reasoning as to why this is happening over the past couple of years. I will link the channel in the description if you want to check that out. It's like 4 minutes long, but it's really good. I wanted to sit down and take a look at this and go over it with you guys because I think it's pretty eye-opening. And it goes to show you that as more global money pours into Japan for gaming and comics and anime, that things are going to change over there. They're going to start to say, okay, well, we need to change these to be more friendly for these other countries, completely losing the point as to why people were enjoying them in the first place. They don't want it to change for their culture. But this is the whispering in the ear that's going on over there as more of these companies start to creep in over there, like Crunchyroll, for example. They're involved in the production of a lot of stuff now. They like sit on these boards and stuff. I've talked about this in videos before. Like they're influential now in the beginning of a lot of these franchises from the ground up, at least with one studio. I don't remember the exact details, but you can find the video on my channel. I covered that when they started talking about going over there and doing it. They're probably well into that process by now. Sony is making a lot of changes. I mean, Sony's based in California now. So, I mean, they're not, are they still a Japanese company? I don't even know. But anyway, the point is that Japan is changing the way they do things to appease Western audiences, which is not good. This is bad, and eventually, I think a lot of their entertainment will end up being just as trash as our entertainment because they're thinking that a lot of these weirdos that are always bitching and whining about how everything needs to be progressive are the true standards that they need to meet, and it's not. It's not. So this is sad to see, but let's take a look at it. This is from the Japan Times. This is an English-Japanese site, especially because they have a lot of foreigners that go over there and do business, and if they want to read a paper, they pick up the Japan Times because it's all in English. Last time I did an article on them is when they covered the Vic Mignogna situation. This is a long time ago, a couple years ago. I haven't really been to their site since, but this pulled me back in. So let's take a look at this. Behind the global success of Japanese video games lies a delicate task, appealing to overseas players whose expectations on issues such as sexism are increasingly influencing the content of major titles. With the majority of sales for big games now outside of Japan, everything from slang words to characters, costumes, must be carefully considered for a global audience. And that's not true. One of the things that grabbed so many people to these was what they were. You don't need to change these to such an extent to bring in a global audience. A lot of the charm of these is the Japanese culture that is in it. And stuff over there that we would consider sexist isn't over there. And I don't even want to say it like that because most people wouldn't even consider some of the shit sexist. It's this whiny, bitchy faction of fandom that will go after people ruthlessly if they don't listen to them. But then they run around talking about cultural appropriation. That's what this is. This is them culturally appropriating Japan. But it's a problem. And it's going to get worse because the amount of money that's going to come in from a global audience is going to dwarf that from which they made in Japan. So it's a complex process that has come a long way since the Wild West of the 80s and 90s, according to one high-profile localization team. I wonder who that is. I really do. The wild 80s and 90s. Oh, you mean when shit was actually good? Yeah, the Wild West. Yeah, you mean when things actually made money over here in the West? When they actually made big bucks? Oh, and then these, like, crybaby bitches came in and completely made Hollywood almost bankrupt. Hollywood is dying. There were no rules, no industry standards, and the quality of localization could vary greatly from one title to the next, says the Sega of America team who worked on Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth, the latest title in the Yakuza series. Back then, translators faced constraints, including too small text bones, and sometimes game developers did the job themselves in less than perfect English. It also meant that many games from the era, especially dialogue-heavy ones, never made it from outside of Japan. This is true. There were some embarrassing translations from back in the day, and this is mostly an RPG problem. Japan never thought that these games would do well over in the West, and they did a lot of work. I mean, one of the reasons that Super Mario RPG exists, right, is because of the fact that they wanted to get Western gamers into RPGs. Like, there's a reason that we only got Final Fantasy 1, and then we didn't get another one until, I think, the fifth one in the series? Was it the fourth or the fifth one? Because we got 2 out of the 3 Super Nintendo ones. I think it was 4 and 6, and then we got 7. So there was a long gap of games that we never got. I think the same thing happened with Dragon Quest and so on. Eventually, they learned that there is an appetite for those kind of games over here. But listen to this. Thankfully, the industry and perhaps more importantly, consumers have changed a lot since those days, and we are now able to be more faithful to the cultural and emotional content of Japanese games than ever, the Sega team says. And then they point out that localization is now very important to how things are done, and games are now made with an international audience in mind, which is cancer. So they're not really looking at this as they should. They're looking at this from a woke perspective. And the reason I say that is because of these last 2 paragraphs right here, where they talk about how the Me Too movement has changed mindsets, says senior localization manager at Japanese games giant Bandai. Bandai is woke as hell now, by the way. Woke as hell now. And they're getting there. Talked about this yesterday in that Tekken video. And yeah, I get that scene is apparently supposed to be a joke, but I really just don't find that shit funny. I don't want to see that shit in a Japanese game. Get enough of it over here. I don't want to see it at all. It's just these people they've made it that most people are just hypersensitive to woke now. And I'm not alone. I'm sick of this shit. Just make the game with Japanese audiences in mind. That's what you should do, because that's what made them so great to begin with. And the guy who made the Yakuza stuff originally used to say that. But something happened now where he's like changed, and he's all about like changing these games now. There's something happened to him. I don't know what happened, and I'm not even saying that they're bad. A lot of people have liked these new Yakuza games, and I think that's great. But you can't deny that something has changed with the people that make that game. And they talk about it right here, because these are the localizers, and these are the Bandai localizers. But listen to this. We tell them that the cleavage is a bit too exposed, or the skirt is a bit too short, he adds. Before, they weren't very flexible, but they've become more proactive on such subjects. That's the problem right there. Well, now they see, okay, the woman is too sexy. We better walk that back. Might upset those Westerners, which it won't. It's just a fringe little group on social media that's very loud. I've talked about this before. this was before it was called X, but there was a study that talked about how 10% of Twitter drives the entire platform because they tweet hundreds of times a day. That is not the entire population of Twitter. And you could apply that to the West. Okay, you've got a loud group, and they influence everything now. And it's a shame. It really is. But this is the quote right here that should really be concerning to people that enjoy a lot of this entertainment that comes out of Japan. They weren't flexible before, but now they're proactive on such subjects because they think that this is what's going to bring in that Western money. It just is what it is. They talk about this. Listen to this quote right here about Yakuza. But the task becomes trickier for a series such as Yakuza, which are set in real-life locations and use slang from Japan's underworld. Getting it right is important. Around 70% of revenue from recent titles in the Yakuza series is from overseas. That's a lot of money. And they think, well, we can get more money now from overseas if we change it. Now, there are some things that are good, like they don't need to call ramen noodles anymore, right? That's an okay thing because most people know what ramen is now. But a lot of the reasons for that is because people have started to consume more Japanese content. And, it's thanks to that booming interest in manga and anime that has made this Japanese culture stuff more easier to translate. But that's a good thing. Don't mix that in with the bad that is them bending the knee to Western shit. Then the article goes into no longer acceptable. And it's sad. It's sad. This is them talking about changing things. Changes often focus on alcohol, politics, or religion. Just make it as you would have for a Japanese audience. That's what people like about this stuff. And in some ways, it's really charming. But you're now losing it because you're now making games with a more Western twist. And that defeats the purpose of it. I mean, I'm not saying that these games can't still be good or whatever, but I do think that this is concerning. I really do think that this is very concerning. And eventually, you're not going to see much of a difference in Japanese entertainment and Western shit. I think eventually, if this keeps going, it is going to get just as bad as it is here. It'll be interesting to see because you're already seeing a lot of the Japanese gamers and anime and manga fans over there start to get annoyed. They've been covering the localization stuff, and hopefully they see this article or whatever and cover it themselves and get people to talk about this more over there and say, hey, why are you changing our shit for like these woke Western people? Anyway, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. I'd like to hear from you. Also, if you would, please like, subscribe, share the video. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that notification bell. Check out my Rumble and Locals, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Make sure to check out my Locals. There's a link in the description. It's a fun community that I'm trying to build over here. If you don't want to support me on YouTube, you can come over here. None of that money goes to YouTube. You also can just come over here for free. But if you are a supporter over here, I do plan on doing an extra live stream once a month and throwing links to the supporters so you can actually come on and have a supporter live stream with me. Also, it's a good place to catch all of my content. You don't have to worry about notifications like YouTube. They'll definitely work over here. So come check out my Locals.